It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Victoria White, our keynote speaker. I've had the pleasure of speaking with Victoria a few times now, and I think some might describe her life as a bit of a whirlwind. Yet she fits it all in and is really one of life's achievers. For starters, she started a new job just last week as head of customer audiences at ASOS, and she gave birth to her second child 11 months ago in the back of an Uber. Just to tell you a little bit about her varied career before that, she studied Aeronautical Engineering at Imperial College, embarked on an investment banking career at Investec, and then after 2 years in banking, she quickly moved to Virgin Atlantic and found her passion for business, eventually leading the loyalty team before becoming the head of data science and operational research. Victoria founded Virgin Atlantic's Women's Network and is passionate about progressing women's careers and women being financially independent. This is even more important to her now that she has her own children. And she has some great tips for us in her talk on this special day. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Victoria. If you have any questions as she goes along, please do feel free to put them in the chat, and we will stop at an appropriate time or take them at the end. Thank you very much to Victoria.
There we go. Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you for having me and for joining the session. I think we've got about half an hour, and I thought I would take you on a journey of where I've gone from in my career, where I'm to, and all the things that have guided me in the pursuit of financial independence and the pursuit of having success in my career. As Melanie just said, I have had quite a varied career. One could say I don't really know what's coming next. It's more, let's see what the opportunities are and take them as they come. So I'll give you a bit of a background into who I am first before I leap into any career stuff. As Melanie mentioned, I started my career, I studied Aeronautical Engineering. I'm originally from Manchester, moved to London, had a great time living with friends, and I studied Aeronautical Engineering. I was one of the 6 girls on the 100-student course. And it's funny because I actually, until I got there, never realized that engineering was typically a male-dominated field. It didn't really occur to me. I was maybe a bit blasé. After doing 4 years engineering, I then moved into banking. I realized that engineering, it wasn't paid as well. I'm religious Orthodox, and there weren't opportunities near Golders Green or Hendon. So I decided to look for opportunities that would afford me more financial independence and would be more conducive to my Orthodox life. And I went into banking. After 2 years, I actually met my husband when I was in university. Just a little tidbit of when we both applied for the same jobs in banking. And a funny moment is when I actually came out of an interview and he was waiting to go in next. So we've had a few interesting moments like that. And after investment banking for 2 years, I decided that it wasn't for me. It was very long hours. I didn't really enjoy it. And an opportunity came up at Virgin Atlantic to work in the finance department. I've always loved aeroplanes, and I thought this was a good opportunity to move. I didn't let the hour-and-a-half commute put me off. At that time, I had no kids. I knew it wouldn't be brilliant if I did have kids to do a 1.5-hour commute each way. But I thought, may as well take the opportunity. No need to stop myself now. And I've had a whale of a time at Virgin Atlantic over the last 7 years. I've moved in various different roles, from finance through to strategy, and eventually ending up as head of the frequent flyer program. And then that job actually got made redundant throughout the restructuring programs that came after COVID. And I actually was then moved into a job called head of data science and operational research. And as Melanie just said, last Tuesday, today for me is day 6 in my new job at ASOS, where I now hold the role as head of customer audiences. I'm conscious that my last 2 role titles, head of data science or head of customer audiences, probably doesn't mean a huge amount to a lot of people. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of background into what I actually do. Imagine if I had all the data on all you 45 participants sitting in front of me right now. If I would know your age, if I would know your interests, if I would know your aspirations, your career opportunities, I'd be able to tailor the speech very well to make sure that absolutely every sentence I said was relevant to you. Unfortunately, I don't have that data. But interestingly, companies like ASOS do have data on how you shop. Every time you go on their website, every time you open the app, every time you open an email from them, companies collect that kind of data. And that's my role, is to sift through that data, get insights on the customers, and then see how we can drive more revenue from that. So that's my kind of background. That's where I am today. It's interesting to note that I've probably always been in male environments, other than once I left, I went to an all-girls school. Then I went to SEM. I took a year out and I was with just all women. And then once I got to university, I was one of the 6 women out of the 100 students. Then I went to banking. I was the only girl on my 20 people team. Then I went into finance at Virgin Atlantic, again, the only girl out of the 6 people on my team. And it was only once I got into head of loyalty where I suddenly found myself, loyalty can be within marketing departments, and I suddenly started working with women. And I have to say it's, I mean, I don't specifically have a preference, but it is really refreshing to be able to work with women. And I had it was crazy. I actually realized I'd never been interviewed by a man before. I'd never had a male manager before, until I got to my loyalty role. And funnily enough, that my first female manager, she's now a really good friend of mine as well as a boss. So it's interesting to see the different social networks that take place in different works. So that's my background. I was asked today to speak about how I balance childcare with work. So when I started work, I didn't have any children. And I now have 2 beautiful daughters. As Melanie mentioned, my most recent one, she's 11 months. She was born in the back of an Uber. So that's my claim to fame. I am actually on BBC. It was my moment of fame. One of the questions that I do get asked, how do you balance childcare with being a professional? It irks me a little bit because men don't really get asked that question. When men go and speak at the business breakfast, at the charity events, they're not really having whole paragraphs on how they balance childcare and being a professional. But I do realize that is the reality of the society we live in, and I really pray and hope that by the time my daughters are grown up, we won't have to be having these discussions. But seeing as though we are where we are today, I will share my thoughts on how that works for me. I'm very lucky, but also made it happen that when I got married, and I'm lucky enough to be married and have a partner, I'm conscious that not everyone is in that position. My partner is a 50-50. We do everything 50-50. None of us really have, no one's particularly, my husband isn't responsible for bringing in the money, and I'm not responsible for doing the childcare. We don't have specific responsibilities like my husband takes the bins out or I do the cooking. It's very much when something needs to get done, someone takes the initiative and it gets done. And for me, I think this is one of the main things that has allowed me to ensure that we both prioritize each other's careers. That has been crucial for my successes. There's no question about it. So I guess maybe at the business breakfast, men might say their wives are, there's always a woman behind a man. For both of us, it's our respective partners that are behind us. And interestingly, my husband, after we had our first child, did take 3 months of leave. I actually only took 4 months maternity leave. My husband took 3 months parental leave after me to look after our first baby. And we did discuss, it did actually impact his career. I'm not going to repeat what was said in the workplace right now. Don't want any legal lawsuits or anything, but there was a bit of a backlash for him being what he was called a family man. And my husband and I, we were quite upset about this, but I have to say, and we both agreed, that how many women out there have had their careers impacted by being a mum? And I think we all have to get used to, hopefully in the future, no one's career is impacted, but it is, you know, careers are impacted, but that you could be a mum or a dad. Careers should be impacted if you want to be there for your children. Yeah, so that's something that I wanted to share with you. He also turned down a job at one of the top financial places because he knew he wouldn't be able to be there for the children if he took that job. So we've both had to make sacrifices and both prioritize each other's careers as well. So that's one aspect. There are lots of other aspects which I'll go through as well, because I'm conscious that not everyone has that that partnership in place. I'd talk about, in terms of balancing, there have been quite a few hard moments. There have been quite a few funny moments. One funny / embarrassing moment is that when my milk leaked everywhere when I was in work because I was breastfeeding, and I had to walk around the rest of the day with 2 big milk patches on my dress. There have been moments where I was, you know, during COVID, when we had no nursery care for my child, and I was presenting to the CFO, and in the background my daughter was screaming, "I need a poo, I need a poo." So there's been some very moments. Even today has been a bit tricky because our childminder has cancelled, so our baby's got nowhere to go, and my oldest daughter, she's 4, she's not feeling very well and had to have a doctor's appointment. So this morning there was a lot of juggling. Who's going to do what 1 hour? Can we find a babysitter for a certain hour? How long can I go into the office? When does my husband not have any meetings so he can take? So we're switching around a lot today. It's definitely not easy, but I think it's very rewarding. I think my motto for how I do balance childcare and work is that it's quality of time with my children, not quantity. I make sure that when I am with the children, I don't have my phone about, I'm not calling a friend, I'm not on WhatsApp, I'm not checking my email. And I have had to be quite clear, as I said, I started at ASOS this week. I've had to be very clear with my manager. I want to be home 5:30 till 7 to be with my children, and I'm happy to carry on working in the evenings, but 5:30 till 7 is when I'm with my children. So there's definitely kind of some hard stops. You almost have to have the confidence and the conviction that what you're doing is right. I don't really like the concept of mum guilt. People talk about mum guilt, guilty that when they're with their work, they're not doing enough for their children, and vice versa. But I would say no one talks about the concept of dad guilt, so I don't believe in mum guilt. So that, I would say, is some insights into how I think about balancing childcare and work. One of the things that I came back from maternity leave about 5 months ago for my second child. One of the things I never really appreciated on that maternity leave is how many transferable skills there are from being a carer, being a parent. On maternity leave, I never actually realized how much it takes to run a household if you're the only one doing it, whether it's the cooking, the cleaning, the food shopping, the meal planning, the washing, the drying, the putting the clothes away, and then actually looking after the children. There are so many skills within there that I think a lot of people could say, you know, oh, I won't put down that I had you know, I don't work in those years, so I won't put anything on my CV. I think it's really important to be proud of the skills that a lot of people have gained within that time away from work. All that, you know, to run a household, you've got to be highly organizational. You've got to be great at prioritizing. You've got to be able to cope under large amounts of stress whilst your kids are screaming at you. You're trying to get the dinner on. Your baby's trying to eat some mud over there. There's so much, and then the high degree of influencing skills or negotiation skills whilst you're trying to get your child out the door when you're in a rush. I would say that there's so many skills, and even if you haven't been, if it's not maternity leave, you're having another gap, I would really encourage people to think about the transferable skills that they have from being out the workplace if you're trying to get back into it, and don't write off the time that you've had outside of working and think that those are dud years. I'd really encourage people to be proud and have conviction that the skills you've picked up are worthy of being on a CV. A further thing I wanted to discuss today is as I mentioned, I'm passionate about women being financially independent, and I think I guess it frustrates me sometimes that when I see the local girls high school coming out with jobs that they're good jobs. There's no doubt about it that the community needs different jobs, but the jobs that comes out of our local girls high school do not allow girls to be financially independent. Whereas if you look at the local boys high school, they might be coming out into business or into law or into jobs that do give financial independence. So I think in this day and age, both men and women need to work. Like, I think we're getting to that point of London is very expensive if you live in London. If you don't live in London, the cost of living is very high and only getting higher. I think most women are starting to realize that they are going to need to work. And it's a shame for people to only have that opportunity to go into kind of low paid jobs. And one of the jobs I wanted to highlight here today is something that perhaps a lot of you might not have considered, and that are jobs in data. Now, I know when I say data, a lot of people might balk at that. People might have said, oh, I wasn't good at maths at school or anything like that. But let me give you a background into why I think jobs in data would be particularly suited for women who might have childcare, who might be having to look after their parents, who might need flexibility, who might want to work from home, who need remote roles. This is what jobs in data right now. There's a huge skills gap in the UK workplace. Starting salaries around £30,000. And as I just said, they're remote, they're flexible, and they're well paid, and I think very well suited for women. And the key thing for jobs in data actually is to retrain into data takes about 6 months, and the government provides free courses. Now, what are jobs in data? I would say it may sound scary, as I've mentioned. It's not. Some jobs in data do require coding, which again, I know puts a lot of fear into a lot of particularly women. But I would say if you're someone that enjoys maybe Sudoku, you enjoy Wordle or the game, I don't know whether it's called 2048 or 2048, I never played it. But those games that are very problem solving, that is an indication already that you have almost an analytical mind and like to problem solve. So if you're the type of person that likes to analyze, when you're coming to a decision, you like to scrutinize the facts, scrutinize what facts you have to hand, the information you have to hand. And you come to a conclusion rather than by gut and instinct, you come to a conclusion via more facts. That indicates that you're more analytical. If you like, as I mentioned, the games, you're probably a puzzle solver, a problem solver. There are many different aspects of people being fit for data roles. And I would encourage, and I'm going to post a link into the chat when I've finished speaking, which gives more insight into what data roles are and whether you could be suited for that role. And as I said, there's a huge skills gap in the market right now in the UK. Companies are crying out for data people, and the government is providing free training courses. You don't need a relevant degree or previous background. You do need to be analytical. You do need to be a problem solver. But you don't need to have a huge academic background before that. So if it is something that would interest you, I'm going to ask, there will be a feedback form coming around after, I think it's at the end of the day, probably at the end, after the total conference today. And there'll be a question there. And if you would like to hear more about data roles, please write in there, because it would be my honor to help anyone into these data roles that are very well paid. You can retrain for free and are flexible and remote. So perfect for anyone that has childcare or looking after older generation responsibilities. So finally, I would like to talk about why I think what has driven me over the last 10 years of my career, what has helped me in my career. I think number one, I don't know if any of you have read the book by Sheryl Sandberg called Lean In. I would encourage anyone who is looking to embark on a career or getting back into the workplace, or just if you want to progress the career that you're in right now. One of the things that spoke to me in that book was the concept of leaning into any opportunities that come your way that you might think it's not going to work for me. Like, for example, when that Virgin Atlantic offer came, and I knew that a commute 1.5 hours each way, so I commuted for 3 hours each day, would not be sustainable with kids. At that point, I didn't have kids, and I took the opportunity, and it gave me it allowed me to go into more senior roles, which has allowed me to now go into a more senior role at ASOS. But if I would have said to myself at that point, you know what, it's not going to work, because when I have kids, it's not going to work, I'm holding myself back before I actually need to. So one of the key things I learned is lean into any opportunities, and don't hold yourself back until you actually need to. Don't worry about what the future brings, just focus on the now. I think as well, this is more by chance. I actually didn't realize that I was going into roles that were typically male. I think, again, if I would have known, would that have put me off from doing engineering? Would that have put me off from going into banking and then finance? I don't know. I've discovered that I actually don't mind who I'm working with, whether it's men or women, but perhaps there are other people that would be put off by that. And I would really encourage and say, don't be put off, have enough conviction in yourself that you can do whatever you put your mind to. I think another thing is, make it known if you're already in the workplace, or even if you're not, and you know what role you want to go into, make it known to that team or to that business, make it known to the people around you what your next step in your career that you want to take is, because you just don't know who in your network could help you. I wanted to move into the loyalty team, and I specifically went to speak to the manager in that loyalty team to say, I really want to be in your team. I know you don't know me. Let me shadow you for a bit. Let me do some work, even though it's not my official job. Just kind of worm your way into the positions that you really want. Because if you keep it to yourself, no one really knows, and you don't really know how to get there yourself. It is very hard. Putting it out there to the world, where you want to go, and two specific, if required, 2 specific teams, I think has really helped me. Another thing is I'm ambitious, and it's okay. I think a lot of people, maybe particularly women, it's not common to hear women say, I'm ambitious, I want to get to the top, I want to be the CEO. Not everyone wants to be the CEO, not everyone wants to get to the top, but it's okay to say you want to be financially independent, you want to earn more, you want to have a better job. It's okay to be ambitious and set your sights very high. I've also surrounded myself with people who support that vision. As I've mentioned, my husband is fully supportive, so that makes a huge difference. But also the friends that I surround myself with are very supportive. So many friends reach out this week who said, oh, I want to hear all about your first week at ASOS. I'm very blessed to have surrounded myself with people that support me and don't say, oh, you're not with your kids all day. That I'm with people who support my vision. you know, but then again as well, I actually don't have any friends who work full time and have kids. A lot of my friends have gone part-time or dropping out the workplace slowly. For me, I need that support network. I need to speak to other mums and dads. I've also got people in my network that are men that want to be there for their children as much as their partners do, their female partners do as well. So I've surrounded myself and made a network for myself as well, that who people have similar beliefs and where they want to go, and that also similarly want to have a career and be full-time and be good parents. I think I've been blessed. This is not something that I've had any influence over, but I would want to do this for my children as well. And is that I've been blessed with a good education, and my mum, who didn't receive the education that would have got her into a career, she was very adamant that we would have the education so that we could be financially independent and we could have full careers. I don't think it's a coincidence that both myself and I have two sisters are all in well-paid jobs that allow us to be financially independent, and we're all married and have kids. So I think I was very blessed to have parents that put education at a very high level. And I would encourage, whenever we're speaking to young little girls, you know, I'm, you know, all the time trying to encourage my daughter, you know, princess and fairies is not the ideal where we should be heading in life. Yeah, and that really brings me to lastly for my daughters. I'm very blessed to have two gorgeous girls, and I'm really hoping that when they're older, we don't have to have these conversations about women in the workplace, and I'm hoping that by then most dads are much more full on with their children. Responsibilities are shared a lot more, and ultimately we get more women into the workplace, and ultimately more women financially independent, allowing women to do whatever they want, whatever they choose. So I hope today that's all I've got to talk about today. I'm hoping obviously when no one's in a room, so I've got no idea if anyone's actually listening. Hopefully some of you did get a little bit of insight and yeah, some ideas that you could take forward. I think we've got 9 minutes left, so we can probably open it up to any questions. I'll just check the chat.
Thank you very much, Victoria. We have got quite a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
Really inspirational. Thank you very much. I'm sure people are definitely listening and have put a lot of questions in the chat. So we've got one to start with from Laura. It sounds like you've had a very varied career. Did having a degree in aeronautical engineering open doors to a male-orientated world of work?
Perhaps. I think of aeronautical engineering, as it sounds, it is very numerical. It's lots of numbers. Yes, probably. But I'm hoping, so for example, one of my sisters did civil engineering and she had tons of girls on the workplace. She's gone into banking as well. Her team has got quite a lot of women on. She's 5 years younger than me. So although perhaps in my day, I graduated in 2012, 10 years ago, maybe we call those male orientated, but I'm hoping in the future those roles, we won't think of them as male jobs. I mean, I certainly did a good job in them. So, and I'm a woman. So I think we need to change the perception that these are male jobs.
Lovely, thank you. And Bayla says, wonderful to hear you, Victoria. She points out that there are different perspectives regarding livelihood, a good salary not being the only criteria. And she's thinking of careers like caring, teaching, self-employment, which are important to lots of women. Just be interested in your comments on that perspective.
Yeah, there's no doubt that those jobs are extremely worthy and valuable jobs. And anyone that goes into teaching, first of all, being with kids all day, I mean, that is, I mean, hugely commendable. And caring especially, and nursing, all those kinds of things are extremely valuable. I would just say that I guess people have to be comfortable that in those jobs they might not be able to be financially independent, and are they okay with that? And again, maybe I'm so within the Jewish community, but you don't see many men going into those roles. And I think the reason is because you're not able to provide for a family within those roles. So as long as those jobs, there's no doubt that they're much more worthy than banking or finance or anything like that. There's no doubt. But I would just ensure that people are comfortable not being financially independent in some of those roles. I think there's a reality to it as well, and especially when women, you never know what's going to happen in life. There's divorce. If you first of all, you might not even have a partner in life. If you do have a partner, you never know whether that lasts with you a lifetime. And so just if something were to happen, would you be okay not being financially independent? For me, being financially independent is, maybe it's too high on my list, but for me, it's very high on my list.
Thank you. And Annabelle points out that perhaps a management position in health or care would pay well. And of course, that's not for everybody, but for some people, that might pay a little bit better. But it's never going to be as much as in the world that perhaps in the City or Virgin or ASOS and so on. But everybody makes choices, and
that's the thing. It's really about what you hold most closely at the top. And for sure, if you choose a caring role over finances, that is for sure not the wrong answer. It's really what every independent person feels.
Lovely, thank you. And question from Emma. Please, can you describe some of the roles in data that you mentioned? We've had a few people showing an interest in that already.
Oh, brilliant.
So perhaps if you want to just take the last couple of minutes to describe those.
Yeah, I would say a data analyst, that role, and that would be a role that someone could retrain into without experience. A data analyst role is, as I mentioned, companies are collecting lots and lots of data. So every time you open up your phone and do online orders or whatever, I'll speak specifically about ASOS. You know, every interaction that you have with ASOS, whether you search on the website, whether you buy something, whether you open an email, whether you look at a push notification, whether you comment on them on social media, every interaction is a piece of data, and that company is collecting the data. The thing is, that data is spread all around the business. So a data analyst role is to collect and collate all that data into one place, and then start to look within that data for insights. So as I said before on this call, if I know everyone on this call is over the age of 40, I would be able to tailor my speech to everyone over the age of 40. I'm making it up. And it's the same, that's what data analysts do. They look for insights into the data to bring out and help with business decisions. So that is what a data analyst is.
Lovely, thank you very much, Victoria. I think
Someone's asked, do data positions involve maths? Well, you can kind of get calculators to do the actual maths for you. You certainly need to have a grip of numbers, a bit of mental maths, although my mental maths is terrible. I always need a calculator. I would say you have to be more analytical. So if you could, if there's a row of numbers, sometimes you see these adverts on the tube, actually, if you have a row of numbers and they're particularly going up at a certain point, can you see where, basically, can you see trends in numbers? And an example might be, when you go to the supermarket and you're buying tomatoes and you're looking at which is cheapest per 100 gram, if you can quickly look to see which is the cheapest and you have the idea, that's more, you would be drawing out the insight which one is to buy. So it's not maths per se, but you do have to be comfortable with numbers.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Victoria. That brings us to the end of our time, but thank you so much for joining us, Victoria. Such inspirational words for women on International Women's Day. I keep saying that because it's such an appropriate talk for today. You mentioned Sheryl Sandberg, and I do love that book, Lean In, and I think we can all learn a lot from that as we did from you. And what you said reminded me of one of her quotes, which is, in the future, there will be no female leaders, there will just be leaders. And I think that sums up a lot of what you said as well, Victoria. As Victoria said, I know you're going to put a link into the chat about the data analysis roles. So it's something else to think about. It may or may not be for you. We would be very happy to have a chat with anybody in a one-to-one appointment to talk it through with you and to talk through other careers. Victoria, thank you ever so much. Thank you for joining us.